People that don't know what their purpose is, haven't declared and owned their competitive advantages, haven't written out their vision, mission, and objectives, have not rolled up their sleeves to set specific, measurable, time-bound goals on a quarterly basis. Unwanted occurrences can blow that person over.
Jeff, I'm super excited to have an episode of Coffee with Closers.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of coffee. I just got done with a couple minutes ago, so I'm ready to roll.
Hopefully you're not addicted to it. I get headache when I don't have it. That's my problem. Mm-hmm. So certainly getting to it. So I was just looking over your LinkedIn profile, your accomplishment. You're an accomplished author. You've written books. You're a professor. You're a business coach. You've traveled over 12 countries in 4 different continents. Yep. Certainly have a lot of things to your resume and your job title, your name. So of all the things you've accomplished in your life, what is one thing you're super proud of?
Wow, I hope this isn't too counterintuitive, but like keeping my marriage and family together, that's the thing I'm really proud of. Like my wife's corporate, she's accomplished in her corporate career, and I have been around the world. Sometimes we were ships passing in the night. We've got 3 amazing kids that are very driven, alpha, they want to compete, they want to win, they want to succeed. And so I think that's the thing that I think about first and foremost. When people ask me, what do you do? I don't even talk about any of the stuff that you just mentioned. I say I wake up every day and I figure out how to deserve my wife and kids. And that's really, underneath it all, that's what really, that's on my mind all the time every day, is my marriage and my family every day. So that's number one. And then, in terms of accomplishment, the odds are against us, right? More than 50% fail, right? So anyway, that's that. Now, beyond that, I'm really happy with my master's degree. I'm really happy with the international assignments that I have earned and succeeded in. But right now, the thing that I would have to say that I'm really focused on is like a most proud achievement is the Integrity Game, the book that I wrote. You mentioned the books that I've written. 3 of them are tips books, right? Where like Get a Clue in 52, being cute and jovial with my personal brand, Jeffrey Klubeck, Get a Clue. But I wrote this book, came out with it last year in April of 22, called The Integrity Game, and it's different. It's a parable. And it introduces a 10-point model that I'm still figuring out the best way to describe it. It's a growth model. It's an accountability model. It's a framework, a soft skill delivery framework. It's 10 points, which can be easily understood as question sets. And then playing the integrity game is simply answering the 10 questions. Now, it's as easy as that is to understand. It's harder to do because we're talking about questions like purpose and gifts and potential and goals. But ultimately, the promise and what I'm so excited about is all of the different applications. I've been able to have it as a required reading to supplement the textbook for organizational communication that I taught at San Diego State University earlier this spring to college level seniors. I'm working on a version of it to engage college freshmen in their basic speech communication course, the 103 course. So I'm excited to see a textbook, like applied version of the Integrity Game. I've given the Integrity Game as a keynote speech, dozens of times. We've done the group coaching program, right? So we're really building all of the things that people can buy from me. You can get coaching or consulting or training. They used to, in the early stages of my career, the first 15 years, they would go to Get a Clue to get a Clue coaching or Get a Clue training or Get a Clue consulting or speaker for our Klubeck, Get a Clue. But I'm evolving and I'm growing up now. And even though I wrote the book, The Integrity Game, I'm author and founder of The Integrity Game. To offer these services through the Integrity Game brand makes it more scalable. For example, if I want to train and certify coaches, somebody would much rather be an Integrity Game certified coach than a Get a Clue certified coach. Does that make sense? So as I grow up into corporate and enterprise and nonprofits and associations, Get a Clue works. It's cute, but Integrity Game is this brand that I'm really proud of. The book is a really neat achievement. I got it to number 1 on Amazon in one of its 2 categories we published it in. The feedback's been tremendous. The number of applications for it are really exciting. And right now, that is the hot professional topic on my mind, is playing the Integrity Game. Because guess what, man? When we play, we win.
most certainly. I definitely want to get a little bit more into the details of the integrity game, and maybe you can give us tease us a little bit about a couple of those questions.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's one of my favorite things to do is tease people with questions.
Yeah, exactly. So my thought goes back to what you originally said, what you were most proud of, and the fact that you get to keep your wife and family. When did that become a priority, and how did you even, like a lot of people, I've interviewed with several entrepreneurs. Some of the regrets in life is that they've spent too much of their time and energy at office and business, and very little at the end of their life now, just looking back. And some are really extremely successful people who've had some really nice checks come into their banks after their exits and things like that. But they said they've regret some of the choices they've made to get to that success. But you actually decided to prioritize something different, right? It doesn't necessarily mean you sacrifice your business ambition, but you just prioritize things different.
Yeah.
So
well,
how did you come to that decision?
Yeah. Here's the funny part: is that there's sacrifices no matter what. So it's I don't like I think you were hinting at it, right? It's better said not to focus on the sacrifices that I've made, because guess what? One way or the other, there's going to be sacrifices. What it is compromises or choices or decisions or priorities. I think you were hinting at that. And my wife and I, we met early on when I was 19 and she was 18, and it was at college at San Diego State, and we were young. I was just talking about this with my daughter and her boyfriend last night, saying, hey, guess what? This is what it was like. I broke out my journal from 1991 and showed these young people that are, falling in love with each other, 16, 17 years old, and he's going to go off to college, and so they're facing their first real, challenges in relationships. And so I just try to, show that perspective. But I knew when my wife and I were dating that we were young, and next thing I knew, 7 years later, I was getting a master's and she was in the working world. So I was writing papers at night and she was sleeping to get ready to go. We were growing apart, but our love was so strong. And my admiration for her even stronger. I mean, opposites attract, right? And she is incredible. Like, she's analytical, she's responsible, she's dedicated, she's so many things that I'm not, that I admire, right? And so I knew that we would create great kids. Right. But I also knew that we fell in love really young and that we had a lot of growing up to do, and it could be a codependency and it could be a recipe for failure. And I don't know how I had these insights or these intuitions, but I knew I only wanted to get married once. That was, what my parents showed me, till death do us part, despite all of the people out there in the world that, no judgment in 3, 4, 5 marriages or whatever, spouse du jour, right? What's the special of the day? Another wife, another husband, whatever. I knew I wanted to get married once, and I believed that those were Marianne's values as well. She comes from a great family. She had 3 older brothers, younger sister, her mom and dad were together, and so that value, I think it was Lou Holtz, old football coach from Notre Dame. He said, family isn't who you share a last name with. Family is who you share values with. So I knew that Marianne and I overlapped on those things, but I also knew that early on we were kind of codependent, and you follow, like, we were going to have some challenges if we stayed together, and talk about regrets and resentments and so forth. And who's to say that we don't have them now? But I initiated a break. I said I believe the only chance we had to be together truly happily ever after was to spend some time apart, invest in ourselves individually, and then if we were still a choice for each other once we found ourselves, we had a better chance at happily ever after. And so it kind of worked out. But I had to risk losing her to get her back, and then just getting her back, that doesn't solve everything. You still got to work, you still got to talk, you still got to struggle, you still got to fit and start, and it's a commitment, and it's till death do us part means something to me. So you can't ever guarantee that you won't have regrets or doubts or second guessing and so forth, but you want to do your best you can to not have them, it's a complicated thing, but I feel very fortunate in my life and my relationship, being around to be a dad. My son, he's a D1 baseball player at San Diego State, like raising us and all the little league, that was more important to me, being at the games and being available, and like I said, we're a true team. There's been times when Marianne's been gone a week or 2 at a time. There's been times when I've been gone for 3 weeks at a time, and we got to tag team and handle the parenting and make sure our kids are positioned to be more successful than either my wife and I were. I'm humble. I grew up with very modest means. I remember being in college, living on 6 pieces of bread per day. I would have a mustard sandwich in the morning and a mustard sandwich in the afternoon and a mustard sandwich in the evening. So I've got this drive to this fear of not being able to pay my rent that drives me. right? But at the same time, I think that I really do believe, I don't want to be one of those stories that you told about somebody that retired, sold their company, got a nice paycheck, but missed out on games or missed out on events, or has to now overcome any resentments from the kids or any disconnects in the relationships or and who's to say that I'm not gonna have to deal with those things anyway, but I've made a conscious choice, right, to keep my lifestyle close to home, except for those couple of years I was traveling. That was important to balance things out and to expand my career. That was important to go for it. But there was times where I was very, very, very homesick, missed my family, missed my kids. I remember being in airports, like crying, because I couldn't wait to get on that plane and get home. So I don't know if that answers your question. It's very important.
That definitely describes your, obviously the reason why you even chose the book name Integrated Game as well, right? Because it's if you can. Integrity is not one area of your life. You can't have integrity in business and not have it in personal life. Right? That's just
it's one of my favorite things, man. When people hire me for coaching, they're like, "Hey, we're just going to work on my business, right? We're just going to work on my business." Now I know they're screwed up at home, but yeah, keep going. Yeah.
Right, like that's my thought, because I think the fact that you mentioned early on, like I prioritize my life and my family, and I think that also reflects and it's kind of bleeds into the rest of your life, right? And then obviously gives you the credibility to go tell somebody when you're teaching them. Like, you don't want to be a guy who's very bad at selling but teaching everybody how to go sell, right? You don't want to be a guy really bad at basketball and that you're the guy that's coaching somebody else, right? Like you don't want to be that guy. So essentially, I think you're living proof and you're practicing what you're preaching and you're actually teaching somebody else. I think that goes a long way, and I admire you for
Well, thanks. I mean, all of that, and there's so many other things to the integrity game, or why it's called the integrity game. What I'm trying to do with the integrity game, yes, the easy to grasp notions of integrate. Like if you talk about work-life balance, right? Integrate work and life, personal and professional, right? Integration rather than imbalance, right? And so many people can be imbalanced. And sometimes it's not a permanent situation. Sometimes there's phases of imbalance, and we course correct and right the ship. But the other things that I'm trying to do with the integrity game is not just work-life balance, right? Or I thank you for that compliment that I try to embody that integration. But what I'm trying to do is make accountability non-threatening. That's what we're trying to do. And integrity is one of these words like parenting or driving that somehow everybody considers themselves to be really good at it. It's just the other people that suck, right? So usually when people are using the word integrity, it's judging others to be without it or not having it, or where is it? Where's the integrity? No integrity. You're out of integrity. And so what if, to me, what's missing in that is the objective approach to integrated or not integrated, together or not together. Does that make sense? So when I've done this in public speaking with an audience, I'll ask, how many of you believe you have integrity? You can imagine, Samuel, everybody raises their hand. And then I get to do the joke, like, all right, repeat after me. I do solemnly swear not to shoot the messenger in 45 minutes, right? And like, well, hang on, I want to get good reviews from my engagement, so let's make sure we're talking about the same thing. And so I'm gently inviting people to share with me what they believe integrity is. And I always get these two answers. One, and nod, you're going to nod when you hear these, right? Imagine the audience, right? What is it? Hang on. Who am I to suggest you don't have integrity? Let's make sure we're talking about the same thing. What is it? Somebody will say, do what you say you're going to do. Okay, cool. Be your word, right? Then anybody else have an understanding of integrity, or and somebody will say, do the same thing when nobody's watching as you would when somebody's watching. So do the right thing regardless of who's watching and be your word. So I get those two answers and I get the head nods and everything. It's like, oh, did they take your answer? Okay, you agree, right? It's very fun to like puppeteer the room a little bit and be jovial. Why? It's the Trojan horse, because what I'm about to do is heavy. You understand? I'm about to confront people on their sense of integrity and try to make it easy and fun to look within instead of blaming others, right? So we break it down and we say, well, when we be our word, isn't there an integration of word with behavior, a coming together of word and behavior? And then when we do the right thing, regardless of who's watching, isn't there an integration of behavior with values? So in both cases, integration, a coming together of two or more things, word with behavior over here and behavior with values over here. And everybody's nodding and they're going, oh, just the coming together or not together, right? So I like those because it we get to shine the light on the word. It's funny, right, to me, Sammy. I make the joke. I don't want to embarrass anybody, right? But hey, it's right in front of our face. They start with the same 6 letters. Integrity, integration. But when I ask audiences all over the world, what's the definition of integrity? Not one person will use the word integration in their answer. Not one person will say a coming together or communicate that objective notion of integrated or not integrated, together or not together. They want it to be judgment. You didn't do what you said. You didn't do the right thing. So that's the first expansion of thought around the concept of integrity I get to do. The other thing I get to do is turn the screw a little bit tighter and say in both integrations, there's behavior with word and behavior with values. So get this, are you ready for your listeners? If they're listening, write this one down. Behavior is the evidence of our integrity. It's not, well, I was gonna, well, I didn't mean to, well, I thought you were, well, I was just trying to, well, I didn't mean to, well, I was, well, it's none of that. That's not integrity. We judge ourselves by intent, but the rest of the world's just judging our behavior. So behavior is the evidence of our integrity, and integrity is just the status of things integrated or not integrated, right? What we don't like about these two answers, right, Samuel, right? You laugh with me on this, but what if I told you that I was going to drink 17 cups of coffee before the podcast, and then I did drink 17 cups of coffee before the podcast? I will have done what I said I was going to do, but could I claim integrity? Well, it depends. If your purpose in life is to figure out how successfully you can get through a jittery podcast, then sure, but why do that to my state of mind before I'm getting ready to do a podcast? If I said I was going to get in the car and run into the first pedestrian I saw, and then I got in the car and ran into the first pedestrian I saw, I will have done what I said I was going to do, right? But can I claim integrity? We know the answer is no. So we like word with behavior because it gets the conversation started. But what I am here to tell you is that word with behavior is good, but it's not enough. If I said I was going to sleep on the couch for 20 out of every 24 hours, and then I did sleep on the couch for 20 out of 24 hours, I will have done what I said I was going to do, but we both know I can't claim integrity. On the other side, do the right thing regardless of who's watching. I love this time of the year. I don't know, do you have kids? Do you celebrate Christmas? Do you do Elf on a Shelf?
Not that one.
Well, but you've heard of Elf on a Shelf, right? So most people would say, hey, do the right thing regardless of who's watching, right? Well, most people would agree that lying is wrong, that you shouldn't lie. You should be honest, especially with kids at all times. Oh, unless it's Elf on a Shelf, unless we have to guilt them into behaving properly with its made-up story, then it's okay to lie, right? I mean, here's another example. Sometimes fools rush in. Sometimes she who hesitates is lost. Sometimes time is money. Sometimes patience is a virtue. So what's the right thing, and says who, and doesn't it shift from context to context? Doesn't it depend? But the whole world is saying you didn't do the right thing. Well, who's the right thing? Are you deciding for me what the right thing is, or is it incumbent upon all of us to know at every minute of the day what the right thing is for us and stay integrated with that, regardless of what the world says? Because what other people think of us is none of our business, right? Okay, but most people aren't answering these questions for themselves. So they're in dilemma about what the right thing is because they haven't decided for themselves. So they're waiting for the rest of the world to tell them that if they did or didn't do the right thing. Makes sense? And so anything out of integrity invites everything else to be out of integrity. So we like these two answers, be your word and do the right thing, because it gets the conversation started. But I'm here to tell you, and I wrote the book to say, look, I think there's 10 things that we need to integrate. Not just word with behavior and not just behavior with values, but there's 10 things. There's 10 points on the model. They become 10 question sets. And when I get to hold people accountable to answering those questions, now I know what people really want to be held accountable to, rather than what the boss wants, or the shareholders want, or the Kardashians or the Joneses that we're keeping up with, or the social media stuff and all the comparison and FOMO and all of that. Forget now. Let's just answer our own questions and hold me accountable to my answers. But people are afraid to declare their own answers because then they got to get to work. It's easier to just sit and blame other people.
Wow, how did you come to this realization though? I mean, this is a great concept. I think I never, even though the prefix for both words is integrity, never even knew that was kind of the meaning behind it.
Strip down the judgment. Strip down the judgment, just objectively speaking. So you're a fan of personal professional growth. You're a lifelong learner. You're constantly learning and growing. So you've probably heard it said, right, that if you're not learning, Or if you're not growing, you're what? You're dying. If you're not growing, you're dying. If you're not learning, you're dying, right? So what I want to do is say, hey, if we're not integrating, we're disintegrating. If we're not integrating, we're disintegrating. So the idea is this, check this out, Samuel. A building, a bridge, or a tunnel will crumble under pressure tests without structural integrity. Without structural integrity, foundation, well built, well maintained, retrofitted from time to time, a 4-mile-an-hour wind could come along and blow it down, right? It will crumble under pressure tests. Okay. Well, I want to boldly suggest that so too will individuals, teams, and cultures. So how do we retrofit an individual? How do we retrofit a high-performance team? How do we retrofit an entire organization? Well, answer these questions. My argument with the analogy is if I have answers to these 10 question sets, I'm sturdy. I've just actually stabilized. I've tightened all the nuts and bolts. I've repaved, the foundation is there. Like, in other words, when an unwanted occurrence comes along, it's not going to knock me down. I'm going to have resiliency. I'm going to be able to compartmentalize what that means. I'm not going to overreact to it. I won't underreact to it. Unwanted occurrences will either integrate or they will bounce off my sturdy foundation, right? But people that don't have answers to questions of purpose, potential, gifts and competitive advantages, quarterly goals, annual objectives, strategies, tactics, resources, relationship with word. I can keep going. I'm summarizing some of the points on the model. People that don't know what their purpose is, haven't declared and owned their competitive advantages, haven't written out their vision, mission, and objectives, have not rolled up their sleeves to set specific, measurable, time-bound goals on a quarterly basis, right? Unwanted occurrences could blow that person over. Does that make sense? And one of my mentors taught me early in my career, Brian Tracy. He's very, very, you probably know Brian Tracy, right? I was lucky enough here in San Diego to be on his team when he was VP of Learning for iLearning Global, or VP of Education for iLearning Global. I did lunch and learns out of his office. It was like so cool. And a couple times I got to open for him, and I followed him one time after a speech. I'd rather open for him than follow him, by the way, because I was up there speaking and I watched all 500 people follow him out the room, and I was up there talking to my parents stayed to watch my talk. It was really cool. Just absolute respect. And Brian taught me a lot of lessons. Some of them, I made mistakes the hard way, and he was always so kind and professional in pointing them out to me in a way that I could really learn from rather than felt judged, etc. So I owe a lot of gratitude to Brian Tracy. But one of the things among many that he taught me is that weeds grow on their own. They don't need any help from us. Like, bad, unwanted, unexpected, threatening things are going to happen. So the job isn't to prevent the bad from happening. The job is to prepare ourselves for, right, by retrofitting, by structural integrity, by having, by knowing who we are every day, by knowing what we're after every day, by knowing what we're great at every day, what we're not great at, on and on and on and on and on. So back to the family loop. The other thing about the integrity game is I wrote it while I was mourning the loss of my parents. So my parents passed 3 weeks apart in September of 2020 during pre-vax COVID. And I had given a keynote called The Integrity Game in August from a hotel room, a virtual keynote while I was in Vegas caring for my parents before they passed. So I gave an Integrity Game keynote, first time I ever delivered the keynote. And as I went through it, I'm like, oh my God, this could be a really good book. A month and a half later, my parents passed. And then I went into writing, and I infused the book with characters that had qualities of my children. So as much as this is a tool for personal and professional growth and keynotes and training and soft skill delivery and accountability frameworks and so forth, it's kind of therapy and memoir-ish. Like, if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, there's a book with, a character named TJ, and my son's named AJ, and there's a character named Allie, and my daughter's name is Abby, and there's a character named Bubba, and our son is Brody, Bubba, that we call. And the dedication that I wrote in here, like, you can't get very far in the integrity game without realizing how much I absolutely love my wife. So my family is in this book, and that's something that's really, really important to me as well. As useful and practical as it makes accountability, as non-threatening as it might make accountability, as thought expanding as it might be for the concept of integrity and a new brand promise in this space of personal and professional growth, This is a really personal therapeutic thing for me, emotionally. So.
Yeah. So how did you come to this 10 questions? How did you crystallize and say there's 10 questions that would help you to figure out if you're a person of integrity?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I got a couple of answers to that. Like, I remember when it was 7 points. I remember when there was only 7 points on the model, and then you added 3 more, and it's evolution, right? It's partly an evolution. One of the things that I've been complimented on in my career is my ability to synthesize things into like one framework, to like create some framework that makes something digestible, that pulls from right curricularizing or developing curriculum or organizing content or what have you. So, goal setting is one of the points on the model. You can't become a coach without learning goal setting and how to take other people through goal setting and why people fail at goal setting. And so that's one of the points on the model. Purpose. That's not, Simon Sinek, start with why. Or when I teach public speaking, right? What's your purpose? To entertain and inform or persuade. So purpose, I didn't make that up. The importance of knowing purpose, starting with why. What's the purpose of this? What's the meaning of this? Declared. I didn't make that up. I just made it the first point on the model. I didn't make up goal setting. I learned SMART goal setting, and I learned what I didn't like about it and tweaked it a little bit. I made SMART smarter. Have you heard of SMART goal setting? SMART. Yeah, well, I added an A and changed the R to dial it in more to my brand of motivation and accountability. Because for coaching, you need to change behavior. Right? You don't need a coach unless you need to change behavior. And in the old SMART methodology, SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time-bound, you don't have to change behavior to meet a goal with that criteria. So I added an A for ambitious. So I ask my clients, what behavior do you need to decrease in order to achieve that goal? What do you need to increase or improve in order to achieve that goal? What do you need to start doing that you're not doing at all? What do you need to stop doing? So I added an A and I changed the R because the R was realistic, which we screen for in achievable. If you believe you can achieve it, you can achieve it. That's your reality. So we were, in my opinion, we were wasting a letter. Like SMART goal setting was better than no goal setting methodology. But when I got into it as a coach, I realized, wait a second, mindset is so important. So if I believe I can achieve my goal, that becomes my reality. So when I get to R and SMART goal setting, realistic, it's redundant. So I changed it to reason or reward, back to purpose. Why? So overall purpose, meaning of life, or more specifically, meeting one of your emotional needs, right? Tony Robbins teaches us about these 6 emotional needs, or Abraham Maslow in the hierarchy of needs. So like what motivates human beings has always been known, right? We need safety, we need security, we need relationships, we need to be recognized, we need to matter, we need to grow, we need to contribute. There's certain usual suspect needs: health, relationships, finance, right? So that's now the R in goal setting is getting people really clear on why they want the goal so that they're motivated enough to change behavior. But anyway, it's just one point on the model, right? So purpose, gifts is the second point. What are your gifts? First of all, the mindset around gifts. Are you willing to receive gifts? For a long time in my life, I wasn't, because it would remind me of my scarcity upbringing. So I wouldn't allow anybody to do anything for me because I didn't want to admit psychologically that I needed any help. What an idiot, right? So are we open to receiving? Are we open to giving? Are we hoarding everything, right? So the mindset around giving and receiving, but then there's God-given gifts, there's man-made gifts, and then there's self-generated gifts. Are we clear about how all the gifts are in our world? Anything other than average is a gift. Even a mistake or a setback is a gift, because we get resilient and we get the learning and all of that stuff, right? What it comes down to from a sales perspective or a marketing perspective is competitive advantage. Why do people buy from you instead of your competition? Why do people hire me to coach them instead of the other coach? Why did I get chosen for the keynote speech instead of any other keynote? What are my competitive advantages? What do I do better than everybody else that also does it? What do I do that nobody else does? So most of the people aren't even aware of their gifts, or they're not recognizing their gifts. They're not investing in their gifts. They're not cultivating their gifts, etc. So purpose, what's the meaning of life? What's the meaning of your life? Gifts. Is there an integration? Are you aware of your gifts, and can you integrate your gifts with purpose? Right? There's a lot of people that are making high-paid jobs that you talked about earlier, but they're miserable because they weren't living their purpose. They never declared their purpose. They made a bunch of money and they were corporate rats spinning the rat wheel, but they were living a life without purpose and meaning. So it was empty and unfulfilling, and that comes out in other resentments and habits and patterns and ways that we treat people and things we project onto other people, on and on and on, right? So we're always guilty of what we accuse others of. But yeah, man, how did it come together? It's just, I'm not sure. You're in the game long enough and you're thinking about these concepts, and I don't have an exact answer. It evolved over time. The integrity game, it used to be what I would call just a dialogue inside of a coaching relationship. So when in 2011, I developed my coaching and leadership training curriculum. I've trained, dozens of learners over the years on how to coach and how to lead with coaching acumen, right? And it started off as if somebody committed to something in one session, and then they come back to the second session having not done it, what does the coach do? Well, what I train people on is a 3-step dialogue. There's 3 things a coach needs to do when your client or your direct report is out of integrity, right? That didn't do what you said you were going to do, out of integrity, right? Number 1, they got to own it. Number 2, they got to understand the consequences. And number 3, they got to decommit or recommit. Now, there's a lot of care and grace and skill in how you execute that, but I just called it, hey, play the integrity game. It was a 3-step dialogue, right? And then I would train my coaches on how to like avoid having to play the integrity game. So part of it is our responsibility to not let people commit to something there's a high chance they won't do. So we got to preempt out of integrity. There's pre, during, and then the reporting, right? But anyway, that was what the integrity game was. Is somebody didn't do what they said they were going to do, so now we got to confront. That's what it was. But it evolved over time to incorporate, and then back to the keynote. So I had concepts of integrity. It was one of the pieces in when I would talk about accountability. What do people get when they get accountability? Well, imagine a continuum, Samuel, where on one side of the continuum, you've got transactional accountability, to be your word, where like you were, hey, I'm going to be 10 minutes late. You're in communication. That's transactional accountability. We said 3, now it's 3:10. You updated your word. I know what to expect from you, no problem. But if I didn't hear from you, every minute of those 10 minutes would have felt like an hour, right? So we didn't meet at 3, but you maintained your integrity by updating your word. So now relationship with word, transactional accountability, that's this one side. What am I doing from 8 to 10, 10 to 11, on and on. But the transformational accountability, right? So be your word. I'm not interested in just having you be your word. What I'm really interested in is, why is your word your word? If that's what you said you'd do, why did you say you would do that? Right? So then these transformational questions: what is your purpose? What are your gifts? And what is your potential? So potential is a fun one. I'll stop after I break down potential for you real quick. I'll just stop. I organize it chronologically. So if you can see my hand, it's, I've got the 3 fingers here, and like imagine chronologically. So if we break down, when I'm rolling up sleeves and I'm working with people on integrity game coaching and holding people accountable to getting their answers to these questions, so they've got their structural integrity and they're resilient and they're focused and they're engaged, all of that stuff. We break down potential to vision, mission, objectives. So vision is as far out into the future as I could possibly see, and it's a description of what I see. So I take my mind as far into the future as I could possibly see, like, my grandkids or whatever, awards, retirement, properties I own or manage, whatever it is. Like I want a description of what that is, as far as out as I can possibly see. Now, closer to the now, but still quite a ways away, is mission. And a lot of people, have you ever seen this in companies where they don't, is this a mission statement or a vision statement? And it's fluffy and it's a lot of good words in there, but I don't know what the hell that means. You know what I'm saying? Like, people confuse them. Yeah. So here's my distinction to, if anybody's out there. Vision is a description of the farthest out into your life, objective, vision, goal, whatever, your department, your whatever career, whatever it is. As far out as you can possibly see, it's a description. But mission is a destination. It's an accomplishment. You know what I'm saying? So the example that I give is like if Kennedy had a vision that the United States would be number 1 in all of space exploration in the globe. That's the vision, right? The United States will be synonymous with global space exploration. I mean, the world's leader in global. Everybody will look to us for exploring space. So he's on a mission to land somebody on the moon and return them safely. So farthest out I could possibly see is a description, but the mission is an accomplishment, an arrival, a destination that rallies everybody. We're on a mission. Cue the music. Dun, 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 dun. Mission Impossible music, right? And then still closer than that, 1 year out, objectives. So what are my annual objectives? Where do I need to be this time next year to feel like I'm on my way to that mission? And then the mission is the strongest evidence and proof that we're on our way to the vision. So then anything less than a year, ideally quarterly, is the realm of that SMART goal setting. Right? SMART goal setting. By April 1st, by July 1st, by October 1st, what is the greatest thing that you can achieve that will have you in a position to meet your annual objectives? So when you talk about productivity, and productivity hacks and efficiency and so forth. We got to be able to vision, mission, objectives, goals, and now break it down further to what's the very next observable action you need to take today in order to achieve that goal. And then, all right, what's the best day of the day? What's the best day of the week to do that? What's the best time of the day to do that? If you started now, how long would that take you? Okay, write this into your calendar, please. Right? So potential, we start off as transformational, but by the time we're done, from vision, mission, objectives to goal setting to next observable actions from a strategy, now we're transactional, right? And so people can't do this on their own. It's hard for people to do this on their own. You need a guide, you need an escort, you need a non-judgmental helping hand to shape and pave paths and to soundboard and ideate and professionally confront, I even call it profrontation instead of confrontation, right? Pro is positive, con is negative. So why do we call it confrontation? Why don't we call it profrontation? I'm not confronting you to judge you. I'm confronting you to hold you accountable to what you want. I'm not confronting you to judge you and punish you. I'm confronting you to find out what you want to be held accountable for. On and on and on. So we're playing the integrity game. It's easy to understand, but it's difficult to play.
Yeah, man, I really enjoy this conversation. I can see like how you spend a lot of time thinking about these concepts.
Yes.
And clearly you've been around a lot of great minds. You mentioned
Brian Tracy,
and so many other people. Certainly have influenced your thinking, and certainly have influenced your life and what you've been able to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunate,
we need another episode for sure.
I'm happy to do it.
Certainly, to kind of expand on some of these things. So I have a question for you. So basically, you've learned a lot. You've been coached and trained, and been able to be in the same room and be able to share stage with some really remarkable people. Mm-hmm. Are there things, even with all this knowledge, are there things that you said, man, I wish I had done it differently? Are there any regrets?
Well, I laugh
from the knowledge.
Yeah, well, I'm laughing at myself. I mean, there's so many things I wish I would have done differently. But I don't couch them as regrets. I count, again, even the mistakes are gifts. Like, in other words, one of the points on my model is proactive learning. So learning the hard way is still learning, but we prefer proactive learning, right? Like to have an intention, like I know what my purpose is, I know what my gifts are, I know what my potential is, I've set my goals. So now I know what I want to learn and need to learn in order to follow, rather than being forced into a learning, right? So, but as far as mistakes, back to Brian Tracy, one time when I opened for him, I was so excited. The first time I opened for him, I thought, oh my God, what a breakthrough in my career. I went and bought a suit that day. Like they called me like, Jeff, Brian's speaking at the local hotel. Can you open for him? I was like, I don't even remember hanging up the phone. I was really excited, right? It was a breakthrough moment for me. Like, oh my God, I'm going to open for Brian Tracy. This guy's a legend. And I was so young and so shoot everything that moves at that point in my career, right? Like an 18-year-old soldier in a war or whatever, but like the excited version, or there's all kinds of other analogies, but you know what I'm saying? And I thought about my talk. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm going to bring it. I've got it. I know what I'm going to say. 45 minutes, perfect. This is going to be my mark. I'm going to make my stamp. And I was all excited, and I had the room, and everybody's great. And 100% of the people were there to see Brian Tracy. Not one of those people knew who the hell I was. The mistake I made was I was over autobiographical. You follow? And so I was all excited, and then Brian Tracy walks into the room, and I see him at the back of the room. He's ready to come on, and I'm like, and a man that needs no introduction, Brian Tracy. And boy, do I wish I could go back to that moment in time, because what I would have done differently is given him the introduction he deserved. You can't skip over. You can't shortcut. You can't assume. A pro's pro. The show must go on. The way that this works is you're speaking, so one of my job wasn't to make a mark and get a bunch of clients from his audience. That wasn't my job. Mm-hmm. My job was to keep them entertained, get them warmed up, and give Brian the introduction his career and his work deserved. I needed to do the 2 paragraphs. Brian Tracy, as many of you know, is an international. He's written this many books, done this many programs, spoken to this many audiences. He's up this many. I needed to go through all of that. But I was so young and self-involved that I skipped over it. And God bless Brian Tracy, because I was on his team at the time, and we had a meeting 3 days later, and we were all in the room. And he was just so gracious. He was like teaching us all, hey guys, when you get your chance to speak, and he was talking to all of us, but I know it was for me. He's like, never take shortcuts, never skip over. People have worked their whole careers to earn these bios. And even if 100% of the audience can recite the bio word for word because they've memorized every word from every one of the books, you still be a pro's pro and you still go through it. And I'll never forget that lesson and it's interesting now because even when I interview people on my programs or my podcasts, or not podcasts, but my streams or the things that I do, I learned the lesson, and I'm grateful for the lesson, but I have an avoidance now to reading word for word bios. I don't want to sound stiff and robotic. I'm saying, hey, look, you can read this person's LinkedIn profile on your own, but let me tell you how I know my guest. And I just try to speak from the heart. So I still give, I'm committed to giving a heartfelt, genuine, authentic. I don't want to read a sterile word for word bio. I want to tell my audiences why I love this person I'm about to talk to. Right? How I fell in love, why I admire, etc. And in their bio, they're not going to write what Jeff thinks. They're going to write what they think the world needs to see, and it becomes a sterile. So authenticity is a big deal for me, but I learned never to skip over the opportunity to introduce somebody properly. And really, that third-party testimonial, the third-party credibility is, people have a hard time tooting their own horns anyway, and it's always better when somebody else is singing your praises and you just step into it and say, wow, thank you for that great introduction. That was awesome. And then you don't have to toot your own horn. So that's one mistake I made. Another mistake I made is I started flying my airplane at 30,000 feet before it was built. I went off and running, and I got my, you got to get your first client, and you want to get your second client. Like, I remember when I was making $500 a month. Oh my God, I'm in business. Then I got my second retainer for $500 a month. Oh my God, and I called Marianne, that's two, it's $1,000 a month. And then I started going after clients, and the next, I got clients, but then my calendar was full with serving those clients. And next thing I know, I'm in this kind of like, I don't want to say trap to put it negatively, but I'm in this situation where I had my first problem was I didn't have any clients. Then to solve that problem, now my problem was I'm working in my business rather than on my business. So you introduced me as an entrepreneur, I hesitate. I'm a solopreneur. Entrepreneur, yeah, I have a business that owns some shares in some other businesses, and I've bought and sold companies, and I've done some of that. But I have a hard time calling my business a business because I don't have employees. Right? I call it a practice. But one of the mistakes that I made was not setting up systems and processes from go. I just started going, and I didn't have things like automated and systematized, position descriptions, org chart, SOPs, things of that nature. I didn't set myself up to grow. I set myself up for a really cool income earning hobby that I'm proud to say 17 years later, I've grown into a thriving practice that doesn't always thrive, right? There's ups and downs in this game, right? And the next phase of growth for me is to turn it into a business, something that I can sell, something that I can remove myself from. So that may take 10, 15 years to do because of mistakes I made earlier on and not setting foundations. But those are a couple that I can think of that come to mind, great lessons to learn. But those are a couple that come to mind. I've got thousands of them, so it's a tough question because then you might they all come to my head and I can't see any of them because they're all there. But those are two that I can think of.
But I like the way you've kind of put it too, right? It's not about a mistake, but it's a gift, and also it's about proactive learning, not just taking it as okay. I made a mistake.
Yeah, I like to wordsmith these learnings. I like to. I try to play humility, but the truth is like I've got these things called Klubeck snacks, right? Which is either my wife's homemade cookies, which are delicious. I can't show the recipe or she'd kill me. Or bite-sized nuggets, little sayings that capture stuff. And so I have a Klubeck snack around this proactive learning. Like, there's no such thing as a mistake, just learning wrapped in a little discomfort. Don't let the packaging fool you, right? And one of these days I'm going to come out with a book just of Klubeck snacks, all Klubeck snacks. Right? So like there's like the road to mastery is paved with fundamentals. That's a good one. Another Klubeck snack is how you're saying what you're saying is in fact what you're really saying, right? And that's a tip to nonverbal communication, right? So it's fun to wordsmith these concepts and make them bite-sized and digestible. So it's fun.
Yeah. You should probably start creating the most short form videos and just start.
I have 12 Klubeck snack videos recorded, right? I did that a couple of years ago. Last year, around this time last year, I was posting 12 days of Klubeck, and leading up to Christmas, I would post a Klubeck snack video for the 12 days prior to Christmas. 12 days of Klubeck, being silly and jovial this time of year. It's fun.
Well, Sharon, well, man, Jeffrey, I'm super excited to have met you and have had you as a guest and learned a lot. And I'll certainly grab that book on Amazon, and we'll put in the show notes.
Great. Can I invite your audience to email me if they would like a free PDF copy of the Integrity Game? They can send an email to play, Play, at theintegritygame.com. I'm easy to find at jeff@getaclue.net. Right, so any of those will work. We'll make sure that we're happy to send out a PDF version to any of your listeners for tuning in. And then offline, if you send me, your mailing address, I'll be happy to sign a copy and put one in the mail for you personally. I really appreciate you asking about the book and the thoughts that we've provoked around it.
Awesome. Thank you again. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Samuel.
If you enjoyed this video, please share it. To make sure you never miss an episode, please subscribe.